So if you're having trouble figuring out what scales to play and how to play them when you solo, or if you're just struggling to remember the scales that you know, and if you have trouble making the scales you've learned actually sound like anything musical when you improvise, maybe it's the way you're learning the scales you're learning. Okay, so it's music. So of course, there's not a lot of absolute right and wrong here when it comes to learning stuff. I mean, there are absolutes like a G chord has these notes or a C scale has these notes. There's kind of a right and a wrong answer. But as far as how you're gonna learn stuff and what you're gonna do, no, it's a very individual and personal thing. But I do wanna suggest that there might be a more useful or a helpful way to work on learning scales. Because what typically happens is you learn to play a scale in 2 octaves. You start on the root and you go up. Maybe you practice coming down. But in general, that's kind of the drill. And maybe you learn it in more positions up the neck and you're still playing 2 octaves. So when you go to solo and you think, oh, I need this scale, where do you go? Well, you go where you've practiced, which is here. And you start here and you do what you've practiced, which is to start going up the scale. So of course it sounds like a scale. So I want to suggest a different and more flexible way to get that information into your head so that you can use it differently once you need to. And the idea goes like this. Instead of thinking in 2 octaves from bottom to top, start in the middle where you always end up wanting to play and find the root. And we'll just do it with a G minor pentatonic scale. Or maybe we'll throw in like the flat 5 to make it a G blues scale. But so we've got the root. So just go up from the root a couple of notes. Well, the next note up is the flat 3rd and then the 4th, right? So anybody can find the root and find a couple notes around it. So just root, flat 3 and 4. That's enough to start telling you what's going on and to convey a certain kind of sound. And with just a little bit of rhythmic emphasis, it's enough to start playing some music. And it's few enough notes that you can remember what the notes are and you can start to play with it, which is all that improvising is. So now let's go down from the root. We can go down from the root to the flat 7 and we can go to the 5. Again, easy to remember, it's just a few notes. And so with this, we've got all the notes of the scale. If you think of a scale as just being a handle that you can carry around a specific set of notes with, like we call it the G minor pentatonic scale because that means a certain collection of notes. It doesn't matter if you play them like this or you play them like this. The notes are the notes, and by playing this, we've got the root, the flat 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, and the flat 7. We've got the collection of notes that is what we mean when we say G minor pentatonic. So this is a really effective idea, and we can use it for any scale. If you're trying to learn to play the changes, you can start off, I was talking just the other day about playing G minor blues, right? So if the 1 chord is G and we want to be able to just play some G stuff, we can play it here. And then if we need to get the sound, say, of a more G major kind of sound, as long as we know that the only difference between G minor and G major is that there's a major 3rd instead of a minor 3rd, then we only have to change 1 note. And now we've got the sound of G7. Now if we want to go, say, to C minor for the 4 chord, well, find your root and find your flat 3rd above it and find your 5th below it. And then maybe just use your ear to kind of see what sounds right to connect those up. So now when we're on C, back to G. And then same thing when we get to D, let's find a D note. We could find one here, that's not too far away. If we go up, we know that we want a major 3rd, so there's one. And then there's the 5th. I mean, you can just find it by looking at a bar chord and like seeing if these sound like chord tones. And then here's a flat 7, right? Because just looking at the chord shape and pulling stuff out. And then back to G. So we've got stuff around the root. That may not be the most elegant way to play D, but it works and it gives you the idea. So just finding the root of each chord you want to be on and then finding the notes that go with the chord around that root can be a very effective way to start to get the flavor of playing the changes without making your head explode. And if you start thinking of scales this way, then you can start to find the notes a lot more quickly and have a clearer reference point because you're always really close to the root. You're always just playing a few notes above the root or a few notes below the root. So that's the idea, and you can make this as simple or as complicated as you like. I always like to start with just a few chords, and then you can expand outwards once the idea makes sense and once you've got the basic gist of what's going on, just using some familiar territory like the blues in G and the pentatonic scale. So this weekend in my workshop on minor blues and bebop, we're going to start with these simple 3-chord elements and some simple phrasing and scale ideas, and then develop it outwards, incorporating more of the bebop sound, like the altered scale on the D7 chord and some longer 8th note lines, and then get into how to use these principles to develop a vocabulary of licks that you can mix and match so that you have multiple ways to play through the chord changes, all based on these very simple ideas. If that's something you'd like to check out, go to the link below or the link on screen to sign up. If you have a question or comment about today's lesson, please leave it down below. I would love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.